go.
The dread of repacking your bags to prepare for your return flight home tops as one of the worst feelings of summer. Your week-long relaxation vacation is over, and you can't come to terms with the reality of school starting soon. Even worse, when your trip gets cut short like mine did in 2017. But little did I know that cutting that trip short by just a few days was going to be one of the best and most important decisions of my life. Barcelona is a city of adventure, history, and breathtaking architecture. I had always wanted to go, and my 13-year-old self was ecstatic to get there. I spent the entire summer preparing for the trip, and after a long school year, I was more than ready to take a long-needed summer vacation. My agonizing flight-induced motion sickness was the only thing stopping me from having the best trip to Spain, but Dramamine quickly solved that problem. And after a pretty calm flight, or maybe it was just the Dramamine, we finally arrived in Barcelona. I remember walking through the jet bridge, so excited knowing I had an full 8 days in this new city. One thing that caught me off guard, which would later be important, was the lack of airport employees. But I quickly brushed it off and thought to myself, maybe this is just how European airports are. In the taxi, all I could think about was the empty airport and how unusual it was. I mean, seriously, when is an airport or really any mode of transportation empty? It provoked an ominous feeling like something bad was about to happen. We stayed at a beautiful hotel that had been restored to maintain its historical Spanish architecture. It was located in the heart of Barcelona, right beside La Rambla, the main drag of the city. I recall walking in our room right after checking in and seeing how bustling the Rambla was. So many people from all over the world congregated on this one shopping boulevard. Of course, we frequented La Rambla since we were staying right next to it. We ate breakfast there, shopped at little stands, and overall spent a large portion of our trip there. The first few days in Barcelona were amazing, and we had so much fun exploring a new city. And we were even more excited because we were about to explore another one. For our 4th day, our itinerary read Barcelona to Madrid, train 12 p.m. At the train station, I noticed the same thing that I had noticed at the airport just a few days earlier. There were no employees. But this time, there were really none. At the airport, there were a few here and there, but this train station was desolate. The only faces to be seen were those of confused tourists, ready to board the train to their next European destination. I felt that same surreal feeling at the train station like I felt at the airport. Like something bad was about to happen, or like I wasn't supposed to be there. So promptly, my family and I looked up the name of the train station we were at. And the first thing that pops up is an article written by a local Barcelona newspaper. Barcelona labor union workers begin strike against low pay and harsh conditions. Other cities are predicted to follow. Just our luck, I thought to myself. Is this a prank? No, it wasn't. The most important thing, my wise mother said, is to be able to leave the country and get back home safely. And after a lot of thought, we made the tough decision to cut our trip short to ensure we got home safely before the strike became more serious. I was pissed to say the least. I mean, who wants their trip cut short? But on the bright side, we had one more night in Barcelona, and of course we spent it on La Rambla. That night, I grudgingly packed my bags to prepare for our return flight the next morning. We said goodbye to Barcelona for real this time and drove to the airport. The airport was a madhouse, to say the least. Thousands of people were trying to get home because of the strike, and every area of the airport was packed with frantic people. We got in the security line, waited for what felt like hours, and ran to our gate so we wouldn't miss our flight. We safely made it back home to Los Angeles. LAX felt tranquil, which is an interesting use of the word tranquil and quite the paradox, but it was. I was surprisingly happy to be home, but still sad I couldn't make it to Madrid. So the trip we had planned originally had us to be scheduled in Barcelona August 17, 2017. And being in Barcelona, we would have most definitely spent some time on La Rambla. I'll never forget the morning of August 17th in Los Angeles when my mother broached the news to me and my sister. I had just woken up and I walked groggily into the kitchen, my sister already there, and my mother's face to this day is fixed in my memory. Utter shock. Pulling out her phone, my mother read in a trembling voice, Spain was hit by its worst terrorist attack in more than a decade, where a van driver plowed into dozens of citizens during a sunny afternoon on one of Barcelona's most famous thoroughfares, La Rambla, killing 13 people and leaving 80 bloodied on the pavement. At first, I couldn't believe it. The city where I just had such an amazing trip was hit by one of the worst terrorist attacks in decades. A van driver plowed into dozens of citizens on the Rambla. I was one of those dozens of citizens just a few days ago. That easily could have been me. We sat in a collective disbelief in the living room, the bright light of the TV cast on our faces. We flipped through the channels in silence as we all know what we just somehow avoided. I'll never forget the specific scene on one newscast where they showed the bloody pavement on the Rambla, thinking that blood could have been in mine and my family's. Although I had an amazing time in Barcelona, I always felt something was off about the trip, and my gut feeling turned out to be correct. My family and I all realized that if it hadn't been for the strike, we would have still been in Barcelona and may have been involved in the attack, and we may have been even the 13 that didn't survive. The main lesson this experience taught me was to be aware of my surroundings. Be aware of your surroundings always. If we hadn't been aware of our surroundings at the airport or the train station, we would have stayed in Spain and may have been involved in the attack. As author Risa Walker once said, things that are different, that don't fit our typical surroundings, do tend to set off some sort of subliminal trigger in most people. Your pulse beats faster, you become more aware of your surroundings, more in touch with your fight or flight response, which is exactly what happened to me. This experience also taught me to be grateful. Of course, I was grateful before this, but when you're so close to experiencing something so devastating, you really learn to be grateful. And I'll end with a quote by Albert Einstein. Coincidences are God's way of remaining anonymous. It was no coincidence that a random strike happened which caused us to cut our trip short, which made us avoid a terrorist attack. It was God's work.